All right, and welcome back to the forecast card. Unfortunately, not a very great day. 4-4. I think I ended up up 1/10 of a unit, so basically a nothing burger. But it's a pretty fun games to watch, so not a complete write-off. Cincy sweat free. They ended up winning that game by 20 points, completely dominating. Grambling again completely dominated that entire game. Hopefully, some of you guys caught it in the video. Sometimes I mention I'm betting a game in the video, but I don't put it anywhere, which is my fault. I'm gonna start doing that as I'm talking through it, I actually end up liking one of the leans enough to bet it. Keep an eye out. I'll try to post those in a pinned comment. So that one was pretty sweat free. Notre Dame, they went outright. I wouldn't say it was sweat free. That game was kind of back and forth. Notre Dame was winning for most of it, but thank God for that terrible foul call at the end of the game. Luckily that one went my way. If it went to overtime, I already know Pittsburgh was gonna automatically become the best 3-point shooting team in college basketball. But luckily they win that game by 1 in an extremely low scoring game. Delaware versus UNC Wilmington, really frustrating hook. The total ends at 148. We had 148.5. The two teams, they shot extremely well everywhere except for 3. They were shooting their free throws well, like I mentioned, was a big reason I liked this spot, but they combined for 25% from 3, 11 for 44. And these are two solid 3-point shooting teams. Delaware, 37th best in college basketball. They averaged 38% against a really bad 3-point defense. UNC Wilmington, top 150 3-point shooting team against a ranked 300 3-point defense. To only shoot 25% when they both average close to 40. Kind of sucks. If they just hit one more 3, we cover, but it is what it is. Vermont, potentially the worst game I've ever seen. Obviously, if you heard me talking about this game, Vermont has beaten Maine 30 games in a row. They're 30-2 overall, but 30 in a row they've beaten this team by more than this amount covering. Not really sure what happened in that game. They had 17 turnovers to Maine's 3. They shot one of their guys on their team, one of their lead scorers, shot 1 for 15. Terrible. They couldn't hit a 3. They couldn't hit. That was just pathetic. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was an illness going through their veins, but they ended up losing this game by over 10 points. They put up I don't know. I don't know what to say. They just got clobbered. They suck. So Florida State. This one was tough. They almost came back, but again, just a pathetic first half. Then they're kind of digging themselves out of the hole the entire second half. They end up getting to within 2, have a chance to tie it, but missed the tying shot, which would have given us a chance to cover in overtime, but they end up losing this game by 2. Prairie View A&M at half up 9. They just completely implode, giving up over 50 points in the second half, and they lose by 9 points. They almost came back to end up covering after being down 20. Yeah, I don't know what this line closed at. Maybe some of you guys cashed if it moved to plus 9.5, but yeah, 2 hooks on the day, really sucks. Sacred Heart, pretty sweat free. Fairfield kind of does what they do where they come back in the second half, but luckily it wasn't enough, and Sacred Heart kept making their shots. So 4-4 on the day. The lock comes through, so it's a little bit green, but yeah, not a very fun one to watch. So luckily, not a losing day, which I kind of take during these kind of weird tournament games. But there's 7 games I like. I actually like a lot more than 7 games, but I'm not trying to overbet because I'm kind of squarish today. I only have 1 dog bet and 6 favorites, so I'm a little bit scared, but we'll see how it goes. All right, heading on to game number 1. We have Iowa versus Ohio State. Yeah, I just think this is a tough matchup for Iowa. Iowa's still going to be missing their star player in Owen Freeman. He's still going to be out. And Ohio State is basically fully healthy. They're only missing Michi Johnson as their starter, but he's not even a top 4 performer on their team. Bauman had an illness, but he'll probably be back for this game. He's a solid bench player. I think they're going to be healthy, and they're going to show up for this game. If you look at how these two teams play, obviously everyone knows Iowa is one of the worst defensive teams, probably the worst defensive team in the Big Ten. They cannot defend to save their life. Ohio State, not necessarily the greatest offense ever, but they're a good offense, especially when they're clicking. They're going to find a ton of success everywhere they shoot. They shoot all their shots almost 30%, so it's not really easy to just defend one thing. And in each of those spots, they're top 33-point team, top 20 basket team, and they're not a great mid-range team, but that's the spot that Iowa defends the worst. So they're still going to have a favorable matchup there. They're one of the better offensive board teams, ranked top 75 in second chance opportunity conversion rate. They're going to find a ton of success there. One thing Iowa does well is they don't turn the ball over, which is something that is, I guess, good for Iowa's side. And they don't foul a lot, and this is an Ohio State team that is really good at the free throw line. But if you look at the other side here, this is an Iowa team. They shoot a lot of threes. Ohio State has basically a top 10 3-point defense, ranked 12th. They're keeping teams under 30% from shooting threes, which is incredible. They shoot a decent chunk of near basket shots. They're probably going to have a decent amount of success there. But still, Ohio State is a top 75 near basket defense, top 100 mid-range defense. Significantly better than Iowa is defensively. Ohio State is technically known to be a team that fouls a lot, but this is not a good Iowa free throw shooting team. They also don't really get to the line very often, so I don't think they're going to have an advantage there. But one thing that they do well historically is they get a lot of points off steals, but Ohio State doesn't turn the ball over. They're ranked second in college basketball in not turning the ball over. And again, Ohio State's not good on their own boards, but Iowa's not a team that really can get boards, especially missing Freeman. So I think this is a really tough matchup here for Iowa State, or for Iowa. Ohio State is not a team, especially in the Big Ten, that's kind of due for a lot of regression. They've kind of been a team that's slowly building back up. If you look at teams on the road, Iowa's much worse on the road in this spot. They kind of rely on home advantage for a lot of their success. Ohio State's pretty solid on the road. They're basically equal. They're a really good team on neutral courts. They played a harder schedule. They kind of looked a little bit worse near the end of the year, and Iowa kind of picked it up. But I think Ohio was kind of just knowing that they had to maybe kind of lock in for this tournament. Ohio State technically not a top 25 team, but I think they have the ability to. And Iowa has really struggled stepping up in competition. They play every team well, but their biggest struggle is top 25. They fall outside the top 200 when they play these types of teams. Ohio State's going to have one extra day of rest, playing one fewer game than Iowa, who just had to travel to Nebraska to finish off their year. These two teams have already played once this year, where Ohio State won that game by 17. I think that's going to be a very similar scoreline. I don't see a world here where Iowa can keep it close. Yeah, they've been playing better, but I really like Ohio State in this spot, especially since this game is going to be closer to their home. And I think there's going to be a lot more Ohio State fans there than Iowa. It's going to be a lot more of a home game than it will be for Iowa. So give me Ohio State here, -5. All right, and that brings us to what I would argue is probably the most disgusting bet of the day that I like. But I'm riding with Georgetown in this game. Now, DePaul has had their number. Georgetown has lost to DePaul twice this year. Two of DePaul's basically only Big East wins. But when you really dig into the matchup between these two teams, I don't understand why Georgetown has struggled. They have a really, really solid matchup. If you look at their power ratings, Georgetown has been a better team on the road than at home. DePaul has been a much worse team on the road. If you look at their last 5 ratings, last 10 ratings, Georgetown has been a much better team than DePaul has. And DePaul, when kind of stepping up in competition, they're really bad. They're an elite team when playing teams outside of the top 100, but they really struggle big time, in theory, against teams in like Georgetown that are inside the top 100. So I think the fact that Georgetown has lost twice to DePaul. This game's going to be much closer to Georgetown, 200 miles from their house compared to 700 miles for DePaul. DePaul's going to have to travel pretty far, where they've lost their last 4 games traveling over 700 miles. Georgetown, again, going to have a little bit of a home edge in this game, especially a revenge angle where they've lost to Georgetown twice, like I mentioned. I don't see a world where they're not going to show up for this game after losing to DePaul twice. One of the worst teams in the Big East. And when I look at the matchups, Georgetown, they're a way more consistent team. They have been the better team on year. They're a better team on the road. And if you look at this team, this is a Georgetown team that is one of the best on the glass. They're ranked 20th in converting second chance opportunities and ranked 9th in just getting offensive boards in the first place. And this is a DePaul team that sucks on their own boards, ranked 276th in limiting offensive boards. This is a Georgetown team ranked top 100 and getting points off steals. This is a DePaul team that turns the ball over a lot. This is a Georgetown team that shoots a lot of shots in the paint and threes. That's basically all they shoot. Over 80% of their shots are in the paint or from three. They don't shoot a lot of mid-range shots. And this is a DePaul team that doesn't defend the paint or doesn't defend really anything really well at all. I don't understand how they've struggled against this team. On the other side, DePaul, they shoot a ton of threes. Almost 50% of their shots come from beyond the arc. And this is a Georgetown team that's ranked 75th in college basketball at defending the three. DePaul shoots 35% of the shots in the paint. Georgetown top 50 in paint defense. Georgetown doesn't really do anything else well. They're not going to get to the free throw line. They're not very good on the boards. They don't get a lot of points off turnovers. Their only way they get points is in the paint, and Georgetown, in theory, should be able to stop them. So I think this is just a good spot for Georgetown. I can't back DePaul. If you lose to DePaul 3 times in a row, especially after just losing to them on Saturday, you deserve what's coming to you. But I think Georgetown shows up for this game and wins this game by 5, 6, 7 points. All right, heading on to game number 3, we have Sacred Heart versus Merrimack. I really like Merrimack in this spot. Both these teams have very similar logo fonts, which I'm just noticing now, which is kind of interesting. But I do think Merrimack is just straight up the better team. Now, Sacred Heart has covered and won 2 of their last 3 matchups, including their most recent game where Sacred Heart went on the road and beat Merrimack by 1 point, compared to the last game where Merrimack went on the road to beat Sacred Heart and also beat them by 1 point. Both these games have been extremely close, which is kind of, I guess, why the line is like this. And maybe you think Sacred Heart's to play because they played 2 games extremely close, whatever. But when I look into the matchups of these 2 teams, I don't understand how these games have been that close. Merrimack, they're a team that they kind of suck at shooting threes, but they shoot a lot of threes. Sacred Heart's not really known to be a defensive team. They're ranked 303rd in defensive efficiency. So Merrimack's still going to find success shooting, even though they're not really that good offensively. But the one thing that they do well is they force turnovers. They're ranked 3rd in college basketball and getting points off steals. Sacred Heart is outside of the top 300. They turn the ball over a ton, ranked 319th. I think Merrimack's going to show up, especially in the revenge spot after losing a really close game to Sacred Heart last time they played. I think they're going to be playing a bit harder than Sacred Heart here, who just had a really grindy win over Fairfield. Fairfield, they're not a great team, but they're very physical, and it's a lot of effort to defend them because they kind of just try to force you into fouls and you got to play defensively well, especially since Fairfield brought that game to within like 3 points at some point. So I think Sacred Heart's going to be a bit more gas than Merrimack here, who's going to be well rested and basically assuming that Sacred Heart was going to win this game, as they've dominated Fairfield already twice in previous times they played. So offensively, I think Merrimack's going to find success. And if you look at how the Sacred Heart team likes to score, they're a team that shoots a lot of threes. 45% of their shots come from beyond the arc. And on paper, Merrimack is a really good three-point defense, ranked 73rd in college basketball in defending the three. They don't turn the ball over at all. Sacred Heart does rely on getting points off steals. This is a Merrimack team ranked 10th in limiting points off steals. They won't let Sacred Heart get to the line very much. Sacred Heart will probably find a little bit of success on the offensive boards, but really they're not that good of an offensive board team. Merrimack's been the better team on the year. They've played a slightly harder schedule. They're one of the best teams in college basketball on the road. If you look at the power ratings between these two teams, Merrimack is the best road team in the conference, while Sacred Heart's one of the worst. They fall almost on the outside of the top 300 when playing on the road, compared to Merrimack, who almost makes it into the top 100 when playing on the road. Obviously, neutral isn't necessarily the same thing as road, but it's closer, right? Merrimack ended the season off playing pretty well. They've been the better team. They play bad teams better than they play good teams. And Sacred Heart, is on paper actually a pretty bad team. I just think that Merrimack's the better team here. And the fact that these two games have been really close, I really like that Merrimack here is coming off a tough loss. But they finished off their year with 2 great wins, winning by 10 and 22 against Quinnipiac and Marist. Sacred Heart's played some close games. They lost to Iona by 2, Manhattan by 16. They just beat Fairfield, but that was a game they should have won. So, fuck it. Give me Merrimack here minus 3.5. I think they show themselves that they're the better team. If they put in the effort, especially in forcing turnovers, I think they can easily win this game by 5 to 10 points. All right, that brings us to game number 4, which is Cal State Bakersfield versus UC Santa Barbara. Now, this has been kind of similar to the Vermont play, which if you tailed that one, you saw how that went. But these two teams have played head to head for a while. USB has owned this head to head. USB won their first game. They played against each other in 2016, but since then USB has won 11 straight, covering in 8 of 10. So, including 3 of the last 2 this season already, where they won by 6 and won by 12. I think they're just the better team here. CSB is going to be a little bit more rested, but you still have 3-4 days here for USCB to rest, which I think is still plenty of time. CSB is one of the worst road teams. They're 3-11 against the spread on the road. UCSB is not a great road team, but they are better, much better than Cal State Bakersfield team that kind of relies on being at home to win these games. They're a top 150 team on the road at home, but when they play on the road, they fall outside the top 300. That's given the fact that they have the second best home advantage in college basketball. UCSB, they play a little bit worse on the road, but they finished off the season playing much better than Cal State Bakersfield. I think we're getting them at a really reasonable price here. If you look at how these two teams kind of match up offensively, UCSB is just really the better team. Model-wise, I have them winning this game by 7, hitting them at 4.5. Being the way better team, almost 100 ranking points higher than Cal State on the year. They shoot a good chunk of threes and mid-range shots. They're ranked 13th in three-point percentage against a Cal State Bakersfield team that is ranked almost outside of the top 300, ranked 286th in three-point defense. They shoot at 35% of their shots come from in the paint. They're a top 100 near basket team compared to a Cal State Bakersfield team that's ranked 310th in near basket defense. UCSB is a really elite free throw shooting team, ranked 26th at college basketball, shooting 78% from the free throw line. They don't really get to the line very much, but this is a Cal State Bakersfield team ranked 359th in how many free throw attempts they give their opponent. So I still think they're going to struggle here, especially if UC Santa Barbara is playing a lot more in the paint, where they're going to have a significant advantage. On the other side, this is a Cal State Bakersfield team that shoots a lot of shots from the mid-range. They're really not that good at shooting from the mid-range. From 3, they're going to have a lot of problems. Even though they shoot the 3 well, UCSB is an elite three-point defense, top 75. They probably will get a lot more free throw attempts on paper. But again, UCSB doesn't foul nearly as much as CCUSB. I think it balances out. And CCUSB is just UCSB is the better free throw shooting team by about 2%. The only spot where Bakersfield has an advantage is on the offensive boards. But I don't think that's enough here. If UCSB gets hot from 3, this game is going to be over before it even started. So I really like UCSB here. It's tough for Cal State Bakersfield to get in a run spot when they're just so bad on the road. And UCSB plays pretty solid on the road. So give me UCSB here. I think they're the better team. That's all I'm going to say on that one. All right, and that brings us to our lock of the day, which is going to be Seton Hall versus Villanova. Now, if you know me, I don't know, a lot of you are new here, but fading Seton Hall is, at some point was my favorite passing time. But this is still an elite Villanova team. When you think of the teams that perform well in tournaments, you typically have your stars playing like 35 minutes of the game. And Villanova has 2 of the best players in college basketball, at least in the conference. And they are super elite. And Seton Hall is not that good as a defender team to stop these 2 from doing whatever they want on the field. You always want to have the best player on the court in tournaments, and they're going to have the 2 best players on the court. Villanova, they're still due for some positive regression. Just a little bit less than Seton Hall is. And matchup-wise, I think this is a extremely tough matchup here for Seton Hall. If you look at where Seton Hall likes to score, they're a team that shoots a lot of shots in the paint, mid-range shots, offensive boards, and forcing turnovers, right? Villanova, ranked top 60 in near basket defense. Seton Hall is going to struggle where they take over 40% of their shots. Villanova is an elite team on their own boards. They're ranked 30th in limiting offensive glass opportunities. That's kind of where Seton Hall has historically gotten like almost half of their points because their offense is so bad. they're going to find a little bit of success in forcing turnovers, but it's still a Nova team that's almost top 100 in limiting turnovers. I don't think it's going to be that big of a problem for them. Seton Hall turns the ball over a lot more, and they're also much worse on the boards. Even though Villanova is much worse at forcing turnovers and getting points on the offensive boards, it is what it is. But yeah, I think Seton Hall is a tough matchup for them. Nova is a pretty elite defense, and they're even a better offense. If you look at Seton Hall or Villanova, they like to shoot a ton of threes, and that is the worst spot for Seton Hall. They don't defend the three well. They're ranked 265th in defending the three. Villanova is ranked 7th in college basketball in three-point percentage, shooting at almost at a 40% clip. They're also the second best free throw shooting team in college basketball, shooting the free throws at 83%. So it does come push to shove near the end of the game. Villanova is just going to make all their free throws compared to Seton Hall, who's ranked 345th in shooting free throws. Yeah, I just don't see a world here where obviously both these teams play extremely slow basketball, and maybe it's going to be a low total, and that's why the line is so low. But I have Villanova winning this game by 18. I think they're the way better team. On paper, both these teams, I guess Seton Hall plays a little bit better on the road. They've historically played decent on neutral rating, but so is Villanova. They've been basically a top 50 team all year. They've been playing only better to finish off the year. Seton Hall also has been playing better, but I think this is the tournament for Villanova. They crush these teams that are between the ranked top 100, top 200 teams. Seton Hall really struggles against these elite, top 50 teams. Villanova's going to have 4 extra days rest here. Seton Hall just had to play a really tough stretch at the end of the year, getting crushed with 6 losses in a row. Villanova's going to be a bit pissed off, dropping their last game to Georgetown. They've had 8 days to plan this game against Seton Hall. I think they're going to come big into this tournament. A lot of people are kind of down on them this year, but this is still a Villanova team that, I think they're going to crush Seton here. They haven't covered the stubber the last time they played them, but that was basically a meaningless game. They shot their 3 terribly. This is going to be basically a revenge spot here for them to prove that they're a way better team than Seton Hall. I just love the spot. Villanova 8-6 as a road favorites. They play really good on the road. Seton Hall 4-7 as road dogs, and this game is going to be close to both of them. It's going to be not a travel spot for either of them really. They're both extremely close, but there's way more Villanova fans than Seton Hall fans this year. I don't think anyone that loves Seton Hall is going to show up to this game, so I think Villanova wins this game by 20 points. All right, and that brings us to our last 2 bets of the day, which are going to be Kansas State and South Carolina State. Kansas State, I think they were coming into this game with all the momentum. They've been playing way better than Baylor has. Baylor has been a pretty underwhelming year, to say the least. Omier has not been, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but he's been pretty underwhelming for what he was kind of expected to be. And if you look at the matchup, I think Kansas State here is going to find some success, just like Baylor will. Kansas State, they shoot a lot of shots in the paint. Top 70 in near basket percentage against the Baylor team that really struggles at defending the paint, ranked 169th. Kansas State team that shoots a decent amount of threes. Baylor team that doesn't defend the 3 well. They only really defend the mid-range. That's just the shot that Kansas State takes the least of. And again, Kansas State, they dominate the offensive boards. That's kind of something they're known to do. And Baylor has struggled this year on their own boards this year. So I think Kansas State offensively is going to have a decent amount of success. Baylor, the one thing that they do really well is they don't turn the ball over. Kansas State does, try to force a lot of turnovers, but I think they might find a little bit of success still, especially since they're going to be much hotter here than Baylor. And if you look at Baylor, how they like to score, they shoot a lot of mid-range threes. Kansas State, top 20 mid-range defense, top 17 three-point defense. They're not, Kansas State might find a little bit of success on the boards. Kansas State is much better on the boards than Baylor is, on their own boards anyway. And also Kansas State does not turn the ball over either. So I don't really see the world here. Obviously Baylor is a much better free throw shooting team, but Kansas State, they don't really foul very much. Both these teams are due for a decent chunk of positive regression. Baylor, I don't really see this. I don't really understand this line, which makes me a little worried at 6.5. This game's going to be much closer to Kansas State than it is for Baylor. Baylor's going to have to travel over 500 miles, where they've lost their last 4 games, traveling pretty far, including some pretty bad games, like losing to Colorado. And Kansas State, they are 1-3, but they had to play some pretty rough games in that stretch. But yeah, Kansas State, I think they're the better team. Baylor just had to play Houston, and they had a tough loss in that one. They had some chance at winning that game at some point. When they played the Kansas State already this year, and they beat them by 8. But that was at home. And if you kind of look at the splits here for this Baylor team, they play much better at home. They're a top 20 team at home. They fall outside of the top 40 when they play on the road. And this Kansas State team actually plays a little bit better on the road. Last 10 rating wise, these teams really aren't that far apart. And Kansas State really shows up big time against these top 50 teams. That's who they play the best. That's where they play their best ball against. And I think they can keep this game competitive. They can keep it close. They just had a solid win in their last game over Arizona State. Beat them by 5. I think they're feeling good. They've had some pretty solid wins under their belt. They beat Arizona. They beat Kansas. They beat Iowa State. They beat Oklahoma State. They beat West Virginia. They beat Cincinnati. This is a team that when they can play with the best of them, and they're going to prove it here. Baylor is still a team that has lost to Colorado. Lost to TCU, lost to Gonzaga by a lot, lost to Houston. And even when they win, they barely win games. They beat TCU by 3. They beat West Virginia by 3. They beat... these are all bad teams, of course. They're winning by 30, but beat St. John's by 1 on a neutral court. I don't know. I think 6.5 is a little bit too much. I think Kansas State can compete. In the last game, South Carolina State, I just think Coppin State is dog shit. I think South Carolina State, there's a reason why they're one of the best teams at covering as favorites. They're going to find all the success they need offensively. This is one of the worst defenses in the MEAC. They're going to force a ton of turnovers. They're going to dominate the offensive boards. They're going to get a lot of free throws. Coppin State, they're a team that relies heavily on shooting, mid-range and near basket shots. They're some of the worst offensive teams in college basketball. They don't shoot the free throw well. They're not going to get any offensive boards. And if South Carolina State doesn't turn the ball over here, it's going to be really hard for Coppin to find any success scoring. South Carolina State, last time they played, beat them by 30. I think they're going to show up for this tournament. I think this is, in my opinion, a tournament that they have a really good chance of winning. And I think they're going to show up big time. So give me South Carolina State to blow up Coppin again. This is probably arguably my squarest bet, but if you look at the trends with the South Carolina State team, it's hard to fade them as favorites. They're just one of the best teams in college basketball at defending. As favorites. If you look at their stats here, situational trends. Yeah, as away favorites, they're 1-5, 5-1, and 1 against the spread. As home favorites, they're 8-1. As favorites in general, they're freaking 14-2 against the spread. Coppin, as away underdogs, are 8-10 against the spread. South Carolina here. Both these teams have a lot of time to rest before this game. South Carolina ended on a high note, winning like 10 straight. Coppin State went off a win, but that's not necessarily that good of a thing for them because maybe they're going to be feeling a little bit too good after a win. I don't know what to say. I just think that this is a South Carolina State team that I faded before. Not going to do it again. They're one of the best favorites in college basketball for a reason. They don't take their foot off the gas even when they're winning by 20 points. And I love that about them. So that'll be my 7th bet of the day. In terms of leans, I really like Virginia in this spot. I think they're a team that shows up big time. And they have a chance here if they can somehow win out to make the tournament. Probably not. The ACC is a little bit too good, but who knows, man. This Virginia team, they're scrappy. They're really good on the road. And I think that if they can get hot from 3 against a really bad GT 3-point defense, I think they can win this game. Cincinnati, Iowa State, I think they're a good team, but Cincy looked really good in their last game, and I think they match up really well against Iowa State. This is, if I'm going to bet any of these ones, I'm probably going to bet Cincinnati. I just want to, if I want a little bit of earlier action. Butler, don't really want to touch this game because Providence has kind of owned them in the past, beating them by like 20 points. And the only time that Butler beat them was by 1 point. It was really tight. And I faded Providence at the end of the year, and they actually played really well. So maybe their team is kind of gelling somehow. I'm going to try to make one final run after that year off win. I don't want to touch this one. And lastly, Grand Canyon. I just think they're a team that shows up big time in the tournaments. UT Arlington, not a great team. Grand Canyon is going to crush them on the boards, crush them in forcing turnovers. They play so fast. I think UT Arlington is just going to be dizzy. I think Grand Canyon is going to win the WAC this year. So yeah, those are the 7 games. That's everything. Hopefully we can have a positive day today. Back-to-back 4-4s. It's not really fun because I'm up like 1/4 of a unit despite spending hours on research and whatnot. Especially when you get hooked in 2 of your games. But it is what it is. If you guys have any questions on any games below, any criticisms, anything, please let me know. This is still something super new to me, so I'm doing my best to improve day to day. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.